Next Sunday, we at St. Michael's, by our custom, will celebrate Great Thanksgiving Day. There are many past events, past experiences, past relationships that we could invest with ample thanksgiving. This year, I have selected one thing above all others for our celebration and thanksgiving: our mind. You can have everything in life, but if you've lost your mind, nothing matters. You can have many fine achievements, but if your mind is churning with anxiety, if your mind is jammed up with worry, your achievements recede in their value. As doctors of the mind, we sit with people every day and help them unload the burdens of their mind. Sort out what meaning can be found in the mess that can be so much blocking the good flow of the mind. Or if your mind is good, then you're way ahead of many. And though you might take your mind for granted, we can't be too sure that it will always be there. It is something for everyone's thanksgiving while we have it. If your mind is working right, that is good. But how much more could be your gratitude and your thanksgiving if you have a beautiful mind? And that's going to be the theme next week. We don't have to travel far to run into minds that are angry and resentful, nasty and neurotic, negative and difficult, destructive, confused and complicated. When your mind is free of those disablements, you really do have something to be thankful for. Of course, some of you will say, no doubt, how can you be thankful for something which is just there anyway? Every day it's there. Of course we can take it for granted. We can not really see it as any special gift, just there. We let our beautiful mind, however, that beautiful mind that we have or once had, can so quickly slip into indifference, into deterioration, into disarray. And there is nothing to remind us that on one day of the year, we really do need to pause. Perhaps, yes, we do need to pause to celebrate this one critical feature of human consciousness, our beautiful mind. When we realize that something good has happened to us, we become aware that we have something of great value to take into the next phase of our life. Whatever you have in your mind, it's worth pausing for a moment to say, here it is. This is my mind at work. Often it is cluttered. Often there are various worries clamoring to take over your mind. Too often you're in conflict in your mind. Often you are the victim of compulsions that keep turning things over and over in your mind. And whatever you've made of religion in the past, we do know that today we need a new faith to give us that freedom to find a better way to live in the future. So here is something good that's happened. There's one kind of an event, if you like. We need to see these events that are good, and to note them. A new faith points to that greater consciousness of what you have, who you are, and what you yet can be. But of course we can turn the coin to the other side. Something bad has happened to us. How do you get on with your life after that event? Years ago, Rabbi Harold Kushner wrote that excellent little book. I've mentioned it many times. Why do bad things happen to good people? Bad things happen. Sometimes we could have prevented them from happening. But all too often, bad things happen, whether we're good or bad. In March this year, the earthquake and tsunami in Japan, it happened. It wasn't a matter of somebody good or bad, but as a result of that event, something like 2,500 people are dead, nearly 3,000 are still missing, 18,000 living in shelters. What do you do after an event like that? Some people do good things. Some people remain slumped in the heaviness of the terrible things that have happened. In the weeks following that catastrophe in Japan, 1,500 young people, university students, unemployed young people, most of them in their early 20s, volunteered to go up into that dangerous zone to be relief workers for the people who were there. And they have been carriers of many, many stories. Stories of sadness, stories of survival, stories of restoration, stories of resilience. After that event, the latest edition in this Futurist magazine describes a situation in Bangladesh right now, where large sections of the population live right along the sea line, sea level. This journal tells of the International Panel on Climate Change, warning that within this century, 17% of the country in Bangladesh will go underwater. Well, you might say 17%, that's not too bad, except it means 60 million people. 60 million people. Well, now, in Bangladesh, it so happens that they're aware of this matter, and they are building flood and storm walls to prevent that possible disaster. And while that goes on, it's notable that some people in this country say that the warnings on climate change are all false. That is a very risky position to take when 60 million lives could be at stake. What do we do? How do we live the next phase of our life when we are aware of such possible events? The new faith points to that freedom to step out of our prejudice, out of our preconceived ideas, out of our parochialism, in fact, and realize that we all live on planet Earth, one planet. And whereas once our survival depended on managing the dangers of the Cold War, today global survival might well depend on us controlling the dangers of the warming world. Bad things happen. Death, disease, disablement. We know that prevention has been neglected in so many areas for too long. Diet, exercise, cigarettes, alcohol, anxiety, stress. But when a bad event has occurred, how do you get on with your life after that event? The occurring event may not be bad as such. It may be a realization that things are not as they once were. I'm going to talk about 3 such events. So here is one event. Not bad as such, but we see things are not as they once were. You were once happy enough to live the life that you were living. There it was. But then your needs changed. The dream of the future changed. Your life changed. And so you can either remain stuck with where you were, or you become aware that you're now facing a different phase of your life. You realize that you have how many years left in your job? How many years left in your life? What do you do when you discover that the events in your life have now changed? So that's the first thing. The second event is the traumas of life. The deeply distressing event. A baby dies. A young mother bled to death during childbirth. You might say it could have been prevented, but it wasn't. And there we have to deal with the death. Every day, people everywhere collide with some event that says, this is a distressing event. Now how will we live after the event? Abraham Berg wrote his book, The Holocaust is Over, we must rise from its ashes. But in the 3 years since he published that book, he says there is still a movement away from the place of healing, away from the influences of reconciliation. And instead, he says, the fires of fear and anger are still burning intensely. The old faith needs the energy of a new faith to bring healing to our unhealed wounds and some restoration to our damaged lives. The third issue, first one was realizing things have changed. The second is the traumas of life. The third may not be a trauma or a major disaster or disease. It may be a drainage of our excitement, a drainage in such a way that we're no longer part of a lively conversation, no longer wanting to be part of a collaborative enthusiasm for what the future may be. How will you get on with your life when you realize that you're being drained of that vital energy? Years ago, Matthew Arnold spoke of it as he stood one night on Dover Beach in England, on England's shores, and as he listened, he wrote his poem. The sea is calm tonight. The tide is full. The moon lies fair upon the straits. On the French coast, the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast out in the tranquil bay. Come to the window. Sweet is the night air. Only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched sand. Listen, you hear the grating roar of pebbles, which the waves draw back and fling as they return up the high strand, begin and cease, and then again begin, with tremulous cadence slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. In his mind, he saw and heard the ocean playing out the ebb of faith, the old faith that he knew. Yes, he wrote, the sea of faith was once too, at the full. But now I only hear its melancholy, long withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind. That poet died in 1888. He in his time recognized and lamented the draining away of the energy of the old faith. We look at the events we have to contend with, and we recognize how much we need in our time the energy of a new faith. That new faith has 4 features. It carries the therapy of a healing presence. It brings the words of encouragement and consolation. It gathers together the body of caring, supportive people. And it rehearses the ritual of life's energy, life's inspiration, life's restoration, and life's goodness. The faith, this faith, can open you to a new depth of being alive. Alexander Lowen wrote, people with this faith are distinguished by a quality we all recognize, and that quality is grace. A person with this faith is graceful in their movements because their life force flows easily and freely through their body. Their spirit is lit up and glows with the flame of life within them. So I put to you this new faith. This new faith needs the church to be at its very best. Not just a church, but the church to be at its very best. For when the church is at its very best, no other body, no other place can so deliberately focus on those four features that I put to you are the four features of the new faith. The therapy of the healing presence, the words of encouragement and consolation, the body of caring, supportive people, and the ritual rehearsal of life's inspiration, life's energy, life's restoration, life's goodness. We all need that new faith. Would you please stand?